the foundation from which Peter is now going to do his sermon. It's on that basis that attracted attention of people, and they saw something that made them stop and listen to what Peter had to say. So then Peter declares to the people the glorification of Christ. There wasn't a man who was healed who was to be glorified. It wasn't Peter and John who did the healing who was glorified. But the whole thing pointed to the Christ and who he was, and how God revealed the Christ to the Old Testament prophets, and now in the fulfillment of that, and in the one they would crucify. So Peter convinces the people of their sins and instructs them to be converted. Repent and turn again, okay? That your sins might be blotted out. Exactly the same in different language, what he saw in Acts chapter 2 when the first 3,000 people became Christians. Though we didn't use that term then, we won't use that term until chapter 11. But we know, looking back in hindsight, that they were the first Christians of the church in the first century. So when we understand all that then, and we continue, chapter 4 verse 1 through to 31 is a sermon, a continuation of the sermon that Peter has started in chapter 3, and also the results of that sermon, some of the implications of what he had to say. One of the first things we come across is the concept of persecution. And therefore, the other thing that he's going to bring out, as well as persecution, he's going to show that through this Christ, the one who healed the lame man, also the salvation to be found in no other name. And that's got some implications that we'll hopefully look at as we come to that. And that's a pretty strong statement. Sometimes Christians are condemned because they make dogmatic statements. Well, we are just really following in the tracks of Jesus, because Jesus was pretty dogmatic. And also the first, as you see in what you see in the sermon so far, these preachers didn't pull punches, but it didn't make them popular. And perhaps that could be a good indication. If somebody's really popular today, it's perhaps he's not saying the right things. He's tickling people's ears. And anyway, so they preach with boldness as a result of everything they've done so far. Despite the persecution, even through the persecution, you're going to see the boldness of Peter and John, and perhaps that's something we need to emulate today. We need to be bold. Who is it said be bold, Petal? I don't know. Anyway, okay, introduction. This is what Christians ought to look like. No, that's the Jew, sorry.
Well, I'm getting there, aren't
I? Okay. So, it's now a few days since the beginning of the kingdom or church. It is now well on its way to becoming the worldwide, universal, divine institution that was always in God's eternal plan. Of course, a lot of people today would argue against that, because if you watch my favourite programs on the God channel, you'll see a lot of them are based upon Israel. And the things that God is doing with Israel, and the turn of Israel to a nation in Jerusalem, and how God's going to come back and start off. You know, some of the names I've seen on there, they've been around in print for about 30, 40 years, and they're still making the same false prophecies they were doing 30, 40 years ago. It's amazing how they're still alive.
How much is God doing with the Jews in Israel when, instead of being in the synagogues on the Sabbath, they're on the beaches of Tel Aviv?
Well, over 60% are
not keeping the Sabbath.
No,
and more are coming back than are going.
Yes. So the God channel is actually now based in Jerusalem. They've moved the whole kit and caboodle in there.
Ready for the coming.
That's it. So they're all set up ready for Christ to come back and start it all over again. But of course, we've seen in the last couple of chapters that that's not the case, because when the church was established, the King God's family, his kingdom was established, and we're in the kingdom today. We don't need to look forward to the kingdom being set up in a physical place in Jerusalem today, because it was set up here 2,000 years ago. And when we become Christians, are added into that family of God, the kingdom of God. And we are now part of God's eternal plan. Isn't that amazing? We are part of God's eternal plan. Goodness. As expected, the same Jewish leaders that had caused the murder of Jesus, they are now going to be attempting to stamp out this fast-growing church. They're hearing things, they're seeing the same popularity that they saw with Jesus, and they're muttering the same things that they did with Lazarus. Let's kill him, let's get him out of here, let's get rid of them. But in their efforts to do that, we're going to see that they're defeated. And of course, we're living proof that they didn't have their way. Okay? The most effective method of destroying any organization has always been to destroy its leadership. And this is what these enemies of God are trying to do. The apostles were the leaders of the church in the first century, and they were preaching the message of Christ in the first century. They were backed up by miracles and things to confirm the message, and therefore the enemies of the church in the first century, they thought if they can get rid of these leaders, then they'll be able to stop it in its tracks. But they failed to do that. At times it may seem that the enemies of Christians are winning battles, and this is probably seen all over the world. Like I would imagine Paddy in his life, not the other Paddy, in his life at the moment with June getting this particular disease, with his car getting written off and all sorts of other things happening to him. He's thinking, what the hell's going on, you know? Is somebody got something against me? Am I really doing the will of God? And it's so easy sometimes when things happen. I mean, when Isabel got that Guillain-Barré syndrome, you know, that's quite a disease to really come into your life and suddenly think to yourself, well, maybe you don't think yourself, but you suddenly think, wow, somebody had to get me, because this is a strange situation. Every time when we go through problems, it is easy sometimes for people to turn around and say, woe is me, why is God allowing this? What else is going on here? Because I don't understand it. And sometimes some people lose their faith. But other times, people are quite stronger through the other side. They learn a deeper love and a deeper awareness of one another, and it brings a family together and they struggle through things. So it's always looking in the bright side of life. Somehow allowing God to be part of that picture that really makes a difference when we're going through times of trial and tribulations. So basically the enemies are winning, but the outcome of the long war against God and His people is assured. God will win in the end. He's got a far better battle plan, and we've got Christ on our side. What's that? What, Christ in the boat will smile at the storm? What's that little kid's chorus? I'm Christ in the boat will smile at the storm. Anyway, okay.
Smile at the storm, that's right.
Yeah, I can remember that bit. Christ in the vessel. Battle, vessel, boat, vessel. And Christ in the vessel will smile at the storm. Okay? And that's what we need to remember. When things are going really bad, we've got Christ on our side, and no matter what happens, we'll come out of it stronger or to the other end.
Before you pass on, to tell you this little thing. Isabel and I met a man and his wife who were Jews. He was a member of the Jewish Council in London. We talked to her about the faith, and she said to me, you know, I and my friends feel that we're in a vacuum. That was her own word. Yes. She said, with our faith, we feel that we're in a vacuum. We're going nowhere. Her husband was one of the responsible Jewish council in London.
Yeah.
So I mean, this idea of the Pentecostals and the evangelicals who go for the Jews, that is not shared by many of the Jews themselves.
No, that's right. They're struggling. Okay, as the parable of the mustard seed in Daniel's prophecy, the stone that becomes a mountain and fills the whole earth, the kingdom of God will not stop growing until it's filled the whole earth. God, in the Old Testament, God says His kingdom will spread, and it is today, and it's in many, many countries of the world. China has got probably a bigger Christian religious population than some European countries.
80 million
80 million.
in China claim to be Christians.
They are, 80 million. Goodness. Right.
That's more than this population.
If they sung Faith of Father Abraham, it would make a little bit a difference to the earth, wouldn't they? Anyway, okay. It's an interesting, this is a guess the picture. Guess the picture. What on earth would that be?
Looks like some sort of baths.
A private jail beneath the house of Caiaphas, excavated in Jerusalem, his burial site and stone sarcophagus have also been found. Sarcophagus, that's a good word to say now. Okay? So, 4 verse 4 to 1 to 4 says, the priests and the captain of the temple guard and the Sadducees came up to Peter and John while they were speaking to the people. They were greatly disturbed because the apostles were teaching the people and proclaiming in Jesus the resurrection of the dead. They seized Peter and John, and because it was evening, they put them in jail until the next day. But many who heard the message believed, and the number of men grew to about 5,000. And the stone sarcophagus was still there.
If only we could do that today.
It would be marvellous, wouldn't it? But look what we can do today. All right, persecution then, in this first 4 verses, here's the big guys gunning for Peter and John. The persecution is there. Priests of the camp and temple guard, and the Sadducees come up to Peter and John. Now notice, they were greatly disturbed because the apostles were teaching the people and proclaiming Jesus from the dead. Notice who it is who's doing the stirring. Notice who it is who's doing the, what are these guys up to no good? It's the priests and the Sadducees. Okay? And you know why the people were sad, you see? Because they didn't believe in the resurrection. See? That's why they were sad. Anyway, the priests and the Sadducees.
It can be wrong, isn't it, if you know what's well.
Tell them about the Pharisees.
Right.
Tell them about the Pharisees. This also Pharisees.
This also Pharisees. No, this also glass, you see. Okay? So this is the first instance of opposition, alright? Rather face the death of Christ. Okay, so up to now we've had good things. We've had thousands of people becoming Christians, they're sharing everything and they're getting together with everything, and they're really having a good time, and all of a sudden the old power and authority of Jerusalem clamped down on them. Even today, preaching Jesus and resurrection will not always provoke a favourable response. If you've ever done any outdoor preaching in a market square, you'll find out quite quickly that not always you get a good response, alright? It's an experience. So we must allow such unfavourable actions to hinder our efforts to teach about Jesus Christ. When people are negative about what we have to say, we've got 2 options. We either change our message so that they like us, or we continue to preach our message anyway. And for we who are Christians, the second option's got to be ours. We can't let the Christ down. We've got to still stand up for him and preach what he wants us to preach. Sometimes it may hurt people. It's not the intention, because the intention of preaching the gospel is to bring salvation. But it's a 2-edged sword, because when we tell people about Jesus and they reject him, when they're not just rejecting Jesus, they're rejecting the whole of salvation. And therefore it's bad news for them. So sometimes, though we're bringers of good news, sometimes it ends up as bad news for people. And that's a sad thing, because we don't want to do that way. The priest and the captain of the temple took Peter and John to custody because of what they were teaching concerning the resurrection. Okay. The Sadducees didn't believe in the resurrection from the dead, and maybe that's why they looked miserable most of the time. You never know. So the priests and the temple guards. These were the temple guards were the people who were empowered to sort out problems around the whole temple precinct. And these were the same kind of, the temple guards were the same kind of people that were set on Jesus time after time. And quite often Jesus would escape from them. But here we have a repetition. Now the followers of Jesus are getting the same treatment. But Jesus said not. He said, you think they're going to treat you any different to what they treated me? How they treated me? They spat on him, they mocked him, they jeered him, and ultimately they killed him. And looking at the apostles and saying to the apostles, he said, do you think they'll treat you any different? If the message is the same, sometimes the response will be the same. That's what happened to our leader. And if we are true to our leader, perhaps that will also happen to us, the followers. And that colour isn't so good for you, is it? No. Okay. Okay, the temple guards were under control of the priests, who were under the control of the high priest, who was at this time a Sadducee. The Sadducees didn't believe in the bodily resurrection. They were the religious leaders favoured by the Romans, probably because they were less Jewish in some ways than the Pharisees. Plus they had a little bit more input into who was the ruler at the time. They always had a fear that anything perceived as an insurrection would bring about trouble in the nation. So they wanted to keep things, some of them probably were lining their pockets from the Romans anyway. And so they wanted to keep an even keel. And they didn't like anybody stirring up problems, because then the Romans would come down and try and sort them out. So the resurrection then. The fact of Jesus' resurrection would have done great damage to the power and influence of the Sadducees. Remember Jesus in his lifetime, he taught that the one thing that I will put down my life, but I will raise it again. I'm going to be raised from the dead. And that was the confirmation of who he really was, as you see by the Roman letter, Paul writing to Romans, I said the other week. So the resurrection, the fact of Jesus' resurrection, and the fact that they couldn't turn their back on Jesus' resurrection, the fact that people were believing in the resurrection, was causing all sorts of problems for those who were in power Because if Jesus was who he claimed to be, if he was raised from the dead, then the power of the Jewish nation, the leaders of the Jewish nation, should have passed over to the Christ. They should have to give up their authority, because they were no longer the keepers of the will of God. That now had passed on to the apostles. But like everything else, once you've got a situation of power, you don't like to let it go. It was the preaching of Jesus' resurrection upset them the most and forced them to take action to stop the preaching of this message, if they could. I should have put a big if in there, shouldn't I? Since the apostles were so popular with the masses at this time, they had to move carefully against them. You couldn't just go down and grab them by the scruff of the neck and take them off. Because they had a revolt. And any day of the week, people are revolting. So anyway, the Acts 5:17 says the high priest and the associates, who were members of the party of the Sadducees, were filled with jealousy. They had arrested the apostles and put them in the public jail. That's still to come, 5:17. And again, you see who's involved. High priests, Sadducees. The top people are the ones who are causing trouble. And sometimes, sadly, down through history, it's religious people, Christians included, that are often the instigators of persecution. You know, that's really bad news, and it's given Christianity a bad name down through the ages. You often hear that it's all these wars. It's always you religious people that are causing all these wars. Well, of course, the 70 million atheists under communism, they never caused any war anyway. But anyway, so I know they arrested them, and it was already evening. They jailed them overnight. Many of the people who heard this message believed it, so the number of believers now reached a new high of 5,000. The next day it happened, the council of all the Jewish leaders was in session in Jerusalem, as well as Annas, the high priest, Caiaphas, John, and Alexander, and as many as were the family of the high priest were gathered together at Jerusalem. So they had a little conclave of power struggles going on. So they bring in all the big guns to see what we can do about it. Peter and John go to jail. The temple guards arrest Peter and John, put them in jail because it was too late in the day to have a hearing about their alleged crime. Technically, under Jewish law, you should be tried the same day. But this time it was too late, so they just bunged them in jail anyway. And they're going to hear the story next day. The next day they brought them before the religious court. These were some of the same leaders who had condemned Jesus and asked to have him killed. So same people involved. Same history about to repeat itself. Will they be killed? Despite persecution, Christ was still being preached, and in the text it says many more were still responding to the gospel. So even though the big guns have got their knives out for Peter and John, the message is still getting through to normal people, and normal people are responding to the gospel of Jesus Christ. The kingdom kept growing, it says. 3,000, 5,000. Okay. Preaching of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, when these facts meant for eternal salvation to all who believe, was a powerful message that caused the growth of the kingdom. They were bringing hope into people's lives. Death could be conquered. Your sins could be forgiven. You had a new life in this guy called Christ Jesus. And therefore it's a powerful message compared to what the old sacrificial system and things in the Old Testament. Jail time for the faith should not be considered unusual. In some parts of the world, it will be actually mandate. If you end up preaching the gospel in some parts of the world, you'll find a hand on your collar rather quickly. And sadly, in some parts of the world, we've got brethren who are, one we've seen in prison, tortured even, because they dare talk to others about Christ. The Jewish authorities had the power to imprison whom they wished, at least for a time. No Roman authorities described in this chapter prior to their arrest. Who are Annas, the high priest, and Caiaphas, and John, and Alexander? You know, only one little verse, and you shoot over these guys. But these guys were quite big in history. Annas and his sons, that's a Jewish extraction. Upon his death, Tiberius Nero, his wife Julia's son, succeeded. He was now the third emperor, and he sent Valerius Gratus to be procurator of Judea and to succeed Annius Rufus. This man deprived Annas of the high priesthood and appointed Ishmael, the son of Phabi, to be high priest. He also deprived him in a little time and ordained Eleazar, the son of Annas, who had been high priest before him. He was going to be high priest. That should be automatic. Didn't? Okay. which office then, when he had held for a year, Gratus deprived him of it. So this guy, Gratus, had the power to put people into office. No sooner had he put somebody in office, maybe he did something wrong or said something wrong, and he decided, I know somebody better, he would come out of office and stick somebody else in. And so it goes on. Simon, the son of Caiaphas, when he had possessed that dignity no longer than a year, Joseph Caiaphas was made his successor. When Gratus had done those things, he went back to Rome, and after he tarried in Jerusalem 11 years, when Pontius Pilate came as his successor. So names you begin to recognize. That's just touched on, but there's other names Caiaphas we're familiar with, Pontius Pilate we're familiar with, and this is from Josephus, Antiquities of the Jews. So who was Caiaphas then? Both Ananias and Caiaphas were mentioned in the trial of Jesus. Family burial site and bone box called an ossuary of Caiaphas has been found and identified near Jerusalem. The story and pictures can be accessed. Bill Humble's a member of the church in America. He has done a lot of tours in Israel, and we have, I believe, some film that he's done. It's a bit old now, but it's still quite interesting. But he has a website. You can look at some of these things. This is off the website. Caiaphas, well, it's an amalgam. Caiaphas, based on the description of this ossuary, may have contained the bones of Caiaphas. The report goes that this oldest Ananias proved a most fortunate man. He had 5 sons who had all performed the office of high priest to God, and who had himself enjoyed that dignity a long time formerly, whom had never happened to any other high priest. So this is a powerful family, almost like royalty to the Jews of their day. Behind, when these guys got their fingers in the pie, then it always went their way. Okay, they were the people of power. John. Now, speculation, John could be Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, 47 to 70 AD. He was a contemporary of Jesus of Nazareth. Rabbi was the youngest and most distinguished disciple of another guy called Rabbi Hillel, and a primary contributor to the core text of the Mishnah. According to tradition, he was a pacifist in Jerusalem in 1968 and 68 CE, when the city was under siege by Vespasian, one of the big Roman guys. Jerusalem was controlled by the Zealots, who didn't like Romans at all. They would rather die and surrender into Rome. And this guy didn't quite agree with that, so he tried to urge the surrender, but the Zealots didn't want to hear of it. So Ben Zakkai faked his own death and had his disciples smuggle him out of Jerusalem in a coffin. They carried the coffin to Vespasian's tent, where Ben Zakkai emerged. He told he told Vespasian that he had a vision that Vespasian would soon be emperor, and he asked Vespasian to set aside a place in Yavne where he would move his yeshiva and study the Torah in peace. Vespasian won. Vespasian, he said if the prophecy came true, he would grant that request. So as time passed on and Vespasian became the emperor, he kept his word, he allowed the school to be established and the Sanhedrin to be re-established. After the war was over, Yavne became the center of Jewish learning for centuries. Okay? That's an interesting thing. I have a battlefield, battle situation. This man went against the trend, but to get out of Jerusalem in one piece, he had to put himself in a coffin. Well, he got in a coffin, somebody put him, obviously locked him in, carried him away, and went to see the Roman emperor. Instead of being killed or shot or whatever, he managed to do a deal with the Roman emperor by saying to the Roman emperor, look, you are going to be emperor one day, but if you do become emperor, when you do become emperor, I want you to honor me, give me a piece of land and somewhere where I can study the Torah in peace, Mishnah in peace, and that all happened historically.
What's Torah?
The Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible. The Mishnah is basically everything that the rulers,
the scribes,
all the extras that they put in. The Mishnah describes, or is like a commentary on the law. So
the other side is called the Targum.
The Targum.
That's right.
And
which
these
is a commentary on the scriptures, not necessarily comments of the scribes, but commentary on the scriptures.
Okay, so you have a whole bunch of historical documentation behind the Bible. That's where the thing comes from. For example, don't go anywhere longer than a Sabbath day journey. So somebody would take off his sandal and throw it, and he would get round the law by saying, I'm going to my property. So as long as you could throw your sandal, and as far as you could throw your sandal, you could go as far as you like on a Sabbath. Even though the law prohibited, you're only supposed to go a certain distance because of the old tabernacle situation in the book of Leviticus. So where the Bible said something, these guys were very good at finding a way around what was said. And when something was said in the Old Testament, it was a difficult passage, then you got a whole bunch of these people who would comment on that passage, and sometimes as time went on, their comments became more important than the passage, and more binding on the passage. Okay, so that was the background of this guy. Another guy, Alexander. Who else? Alexander wasn't the great one. He could have been the Alabarch, the Roman magistrate responsible for tax assessment. Now he'd be a popular guy. Okay, this Alexander, he certainly got a rich guy, as you're going to see in a minute. This Alexander was not only a prominent Roman citizen, he was also a prominent Jew. He was the brother of Philo. Philo was a great historian. If you ever read any of the histories of around this era, you'll hear of Philo, you'll hear of Josephus, you'll hear of the other one just escaped me. Who wrote the 12 Caesars?
Sorry?
Who wrote the 12 Caesars?
Oh goodness. Ending with Diocletian, I can tell you that.
No. Who wrote?
Suetonius.
Suetonius.
Who wrote the?
Yes.
Suetonius wrote.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you get loads of these guys in history. They're embedded in history, and in the Bible, they just you spring up and you can hear comments from them back and forth. So there, it's Alexander. He was a brother of Philo. The father of Alexander, Tiberius. Tiberius is a famous name who married Bernice, the daughter of Agrippa, the elder, and later became governor of Judea. So these are not small people. These are big potatoes we're talking about, who have come up against Peter and John in this passage. Okay, it's the second part of this description of Alexander. Josephus says that Agrippa desperately sought a loan in the amount of 200,000 drachmas from Alexander the Alabarchan. Alexandria, this, I don't know what I did there, Alexander. Oh, he's Alabarchan of Alexandria, probably. This would have been in circa 35 AD, and that's again from Josephus.
Incidentally, the Jews regard Josephus as a traitor.
Yes.
Still.
Yeah. Yes. He stood back while watched Jerusalem be destroyed. This Alexander would have been well liked by the temple priesthood because he was responsible for the silver and gold poured into the temple gates, including the beautiful gate of the temple. So this is a man who supplied all the beautiful gilding and all the gold around a lot of the temple exterior and area when it was being built by Herod. So this man, that tells you right away this man was rich. But the very fact that he was a taxman could imply how he received a lot of his riches. So on one hand you've got a Jew saying, this is a great guy, look what he's done for a temple. And the other hand he's saying, who's a taxman who's taken all our money off us? You should be saying, we built the temple, we gilded that. Anyway, so notice, now the size of the other gates were equal to one another, but over the Corinthian gate, which opened on the east opposite the gate of the holy house itself, was a much larger gate. Height 50 cubits, the door 40 cubits, adorned after the most costly manner, as having much richer and thicker plates of silver and gold upon them than any other. These 9 gates have had that silver and gold poured upon them by Alexander, the father of Tiberius. Go on to that anyway. Okay? So, this little piece of text here in the book of Acts, it just throws in these names, Alexander, 2 seconds, and history behind them. These are not small potatoes. What do you think up front?
I'm just laughing. Do you really think that's true?
In which way?
The height of the gates was 50 cubits. Now, a cubit, the smallest cubit was 18 inches, a foot and a half.
Yeah. And one of the other things...
And the temple cubit was 21 inches, which is larger still. That's the gates 40 cubits wide.
There's one of the other lessons on, I think it's Acts chapter 2 verse 6.
Yeah.
I gave a couple of different sizes because of speculation over
It was
nobody really knows.
said to be made of Corinthian brass,
Yes,
like bronze,
yeah.
and then covered with the
The
gold.
gold.
I mean, that's...
a big gate.
Can you think of gates 50 feet wide?
Well,
They're
you know,
they're not that wide in the wall now, and they're bricked up.
if you go down to the Mall in London and go through the Mall there, I bet that Mall gate into the area there must be about 50 feet. A lot of traffic.
Yeah, but
Anyway.
if you stand on the mud of Olives, Bernard probably knows this, and you look across the Kidron Valley, you can see the beautiful gate built.
The
bricked
golden
up.
gate.
It's not that high. It's not that wide.
There, well, as I said in Acts chapter 2, I think it is, I gave the different dimensions because that's quote from
Because they would never really minimise the greatness of
Yeah.
what they had. Everything
Well,
was the biggest.
All I can say is, Frank, that's according to Josephus.
That's Josephus.
Okay. Anyway, I know there was argument over whether he got his figures right or not, but anyway, I'm only quoting him.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing, I wouldn't like to put them on myself.
No.
You're hanging over that.
You'll be hanging around for quite a while.
Oh, yes.
Okay. The Jewish leaders present were all priests, and the questions related to the laws of Moses and possible violations of these laws. So these are like the lawyers picking in what Peter and John have to say and trying to pull Phelps in it, okay? Because these men want to put these men down. They want them out of the picture. And so they're going to do their best. So when you think of Peter and John, Galilean fishermen, guys from the back of nowhere in one sense, and they're up against the best that Israel has produced. They are up against the intellectual leaders as well as the spiritual leaders of the Jewish nation. This is no small-time court, if you will. And you're going to see how they come off as the chapter progresses. These were men, the other factor is, these were men with all power. They had the power, if they wanted to, and they could do, they had the power to eliminate these men. It's only the popularity that Peter and John had with the rest of the crowd that stopped them being totally illegal in how they treated these men. At least in this way, they were going to put up a pretense trial to try and undermine them. So the Jewish leaders presented this special court, all priests, and a question related to the law of Moses. The question was about authority. They wanted to know where or from whom the apostles had gotten the authority to preach something that they perceived to be contrary to the laws of Moses and the teaching of the Old Testament prophets. They were going to nail these two, or they're going to try and nail them. By what power or what name? So they made the apostles stand in the centre. It's interesting, you can almost picture it in your mind, can you? They're all around them, and they put little, like little, in the gladiatorial arena, they're standing in the middle of them, and the questions maybe come from all sides. But Peter, filled with the Holy Spirit, he replied, rulers and elders, still respectful, still doesn't allow them to intimidate them, but he's still respectful. If we this day are judged for a good deed, remember that's the background, that healed somebody, for a good deed done to a helpless man, by what means he had been healed, he says, okay, religious power, that's the main question. I like that one, so I left it then. Okay, I was an extra, did the same. Two doing the same slide. But what? The reference to Psalm 118. The Psalm, we see the phrase, the gate of Yahweh. This connects the Messiah's words in John 10:19 from Peshitta. I am the gate, and if anyone should enter by me, he will live. He will enter, and he will go out and find pasture. So the Old Testament Psalm talks about somebody being the gate, or in the context of the shepherd's life, the shepherd would be the gate to protect his sheep from the wolves outside. And Jesus in John 10 came along and says, I am the gate. But what authority do you do this? How do you heal this man? But what authority do you heal this man? By the authority of the one who claimed to be the gate the sheep had, one of the shepherds. Jesus is the gate of Yahweh. There's no other name. There's no other power or authority under heaven but Jesus, given to and for mankind to have life. This is a powerful statement. It's a radical statement that Jesus is the way to get back to be right with God. Not through the sacrificial system. That is now over because Jesus is the ultimate sacrifice. not even listening to the scribes and the Pharisees and the Sadducees, because their role, technically, is over. They're no longer the special chosen nation of God, because now we have become the chosen nation of God. And Jesus is the one who, by the authority of Peter and John, healed this man. This is a stone which was rejected by you builders, which has become the chief cornerstone. There's no deliverance in anyone else, for there's no other name given among heaven by which we need to be saved. But that's a relevance for today, because some people think heaven's like a football stadium. It doesn't matter what you believe or how you approach things. God's a God of love. He'll let you all in anyway. And the Muslim who is looking after their prophet, they feel that the way to God through their prophet is just as valid. As a matter of fact, they wouldn't say just as valid. They would say their prophet is more valid than Jesus as a way to approach God. So even in our day, there's a real relevance in this. It's a dogmatic statement. It's a powerful statement. But it's also one that Jesus himself said. When you think about what he said, when he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me. So, if we repeat that dogmatic statement, it is not because we look around the world and say, well, we don't care what you believe. It's because that's what Jesus has said. And that's what this second sermon that we read about in the book of Acts highlights. The one who had the authority to heal this man, by whom they did heal this man, is the same one who claims to be God in the flesh, who claims to be the Redeemer, who claims to be the sacrifice for our sin, claims to be the one who can forgive our sins, claims to be the one who can bring us back into right relationship with God, and claims to be the one who can help us to have an eternity with God. Jesus is not one of many prophets. He is the prophet. He's not one of many ways of salvation. He is the way of salvation. He's not one of many different options that we have. He is the option that we have in order to come to God. And that's why not only is Jesus important, but that's why these men, when you think about the people that they're up against, the elite, the intellectuals, the ones who are supposed to know the Word of God, and they say, through Jesus, by authority through Jesus, no other name under heaven given among men by which we are to be saved. This is radical. And it's based upon a background that they know. Jesus turned water into wine. How did he do that? No miracle explained by any kind of law. These ones are told in the Bible were told by those who were there. They saw. And these men that they're talking to know these things went on, who were aware of these things went on. Feeding 5,000 people plus with 5 loaves and 2 fish. They knew they were not ordinary things seen every day, and no one held a sword to them and told them what to say. Jesus walks in water. They were good and honest folk, not writing to deceive, but simply telling us the facts, so then we could believe. Cast out demons. Their lives they laid upon the line, not one would recant, no matter how fiercely the enemies would rant. Jesus' ultimate sacrifice, or ultimate miracle, more proof lay in circumstance of how each work was done. No trick or sleight of hand could explain a single one. By whose authority? Believe the God who does not lie, whose work is done through men. He worked his plan in history and destroyed the power of sin. Okay, we're going to stop there.